I do every morning when I wake up, I had to just look around and thank God for being here. The very first thing we need to do always is thank God. Because I'm telling you, without him, none of this would be possible. He's the reason why we live in a blessed and free nation. And we give him thanks first every day, and that's what we should do, honor him, give him thanks, and that's the first thanks I want to give. Second off, I want to say thank you to Conrad and to John over here. You all can't imagine what I put these guys through. Surprised they don't have holes in their stomachs. So I thank them, and I thank all the folks that work on my campaign. And then lastly, folks, I want to thank all of you all for actually being here. You know, we hear a lot of people talking today about democracy, this being a democracy. Michael Bloomberg, particularly Tom Steyer, they're on TV now on commercials. These guys are billionaires. They're on television telling their fellow citizens that they're going to fix this democracy. I think they need to just drop out of the presidential race and go back to like middle school civics and find out where we actually live. We live in a constitutional republic. We do not live in a democracy. And inside of a constitutional republic, the most important aspect, the most important ingredient in a constitutional republic to keep it free of political corruption, running well, operating like it should. The most important ingredient in that is not freedom, it's not liberty, it's not the vote, it's responsibility. As citizens in this constitutional republic, we have our freedom, but we will not have it long if we are not responsible with that freedom. And that responsibility starts with us being politically aware and politically active. We have to know what it is we believe in and why we believe in it and who we want to vote for. And then we have to go out and make steps to make sure that those folks get in office. We can't sit at home and wish and hope that all these problems will get straightened out. That's not what adults do. When we left our homes, we couldn't go out and sit in our apartments or homes we went and bought and just wish the mortgage or rent would get paid. You have to actively get up and make steps to make that happen. And that's the best thing about this nation, best thing about this republic. We can determine which direction our counties go, our cities go, our communities go, our state goes, and our nation goes. But we have to be responsible, and we have to be politically aware and politically active to make that happen. So thank you all for being here this morning. You're taking those first two steps of being aware and being active. So who am I? Why am I running for Lieutenant Governor? My name is Mark Robinson, as you can see on the little thing there with my ugly mug on it. I'm from Greensboro, of course, right here in North Carolina, lifelong resident of Greensboro, born and raised in Greensboro. I am number nine of 10 kids. I got kind of confused about that the other day. I said, 8 or 9? I'm number 9 of 10 kids. Saw a lot of difficulties growing up. Family was very poor. My father, I think my father was somewhat of a good man, but he struggled with alcoholism. And I think because of that, he was very abusive towards my mother. I tell that story to tell this story. When my father passed away when I was in the 5th grade, there was 5 of us kids still in the house, 5 of us. And we ranged from grade 3 to 12. My brother had just become a senior in high school when my father died. And a friend of my mom's, the way my mom tells the story, she came to the house, she sat down with my mom and told her, well, you know, your husband's dead, you got 5 kids, you could just sit back, take it easy, and wait on welfare will send you all kind of checks. You won't have to do a single solitary thing, you got it made. Friend left, and my mom said as soon as the door slammed, she made up her mind. She said, that's not what I'm gonna do. My mom had a 5th grade education, maybe a 5th grade education. But she got up, she went right across the street from my house to a university, North Carolina A&T State University. She got a job as a custodian. And she took care of 5 kids. Not only did she take care of us, she did a doggone good job of it. She bought us a new home, she bought us a new car, she made sure we had new clothes, we were always fed. We had things we had never had in life before, simply because my mom chose work over welfare. It's the greatest example that I've ever seen from anybody in my life. There's somebody with a 5th grade education that really could have sat back and waited for the government to take care of it, decided not to. She set an example in all of us that lasts to this day. Like I said, the greatest example I've ever seen in my life. And besides her instilling the faith that she's instilled in me, that's the greatest thing that I got from her. But anyway, after graduating from high school, I joined the Army Reserves. I served in the Army Reserves for about 3 years. I was a medic, what they call a 91A10, a medical specialist. I was in an ambulance company in Winston-Salem. I enjoyed that. My plan at that time was to go to college as well, but I got to college and quickly realized that at that point in my life, college was not me. I was not ready to go to college. So I won't say I drifted, but I worked and I was in the reserves. And it was at that point in my life when I met the woman that would become my wife. Her name is Yolanda. We have been married for 30 years this year. We have 2 adult children. My son, he works in the restaurant business. And my daughter is an assistant district attorney for Guilford County. She's married. She has a 2-year-old son. My 2-year-old grandson, which, for all y'all got grandkids, you just look at them and just smile. They can burn the house down, you don't care. And she's also pregnant with our second grandchild, which turns out we found out not too long ago is a little girl. When my son was born, that was the moment I knew I had to get serious about life. That it wasn't up to mama anymore, wasn't up to anybody. It was all up to me. So I ended up being able to go into manufacturing, furniture manufacturing. I spent a total of probably about 18 years in furniture manufacturing in different facilities. There, while I was in furniture manufacturing, I saw how bad federal policy could come right to your doorstep. 2 jobs. One job I had to leave, and one job that was pulled right out underneath me because of NAFTA. The first one was back in the early 90s when the wages went down so low I couldn't survive on them anymore. I had to leave, changed careers midstream, turned my whole world upside down financially. The second one was when I was working in High Point. I'd worked at this place for almost 10 years. Put my wife through college to get her master's degree, put both my kids through college. And one day they pulled us all down into the office and told us they were shutting the place down, moving operations to Mexico. And that's exactly what it did. 300 people lost their jobs, and watching that, folks, really brought it home to me how bad federal policy can affect you at the doorstep level. But after that, I ended up going to another furniture manufacturer. I was working full-time, going to school full-time, this time taking it very seriously. My plan was to be a history professor at the college level. That's what I wanted to do. But that speech that I gave at the Greensboro City Council, when that went viral, God had a completely different plan. He shifted my focus all the way around. I traveled the country speaking on behalf of conservative causes. And after doing that for about 1.5 years, we decided to try to make a difference by running for office. And here we are running for lieutenant governor. So now, why am I running for lieutenant governor? What do I want to focus on? For those of you all that know how the office operates, you can basically make the office of lieutenant governor into whatever you want to make it into. You can focus on issues that desperately need to be focused on. That's exactly what I intend to do. There are some duties that I'll have. I have to sit on the State Board of Education. I have to sit on the Board of Community Colleges. And of course, preside over the Senate as well. But there are other times when I'll be able to highlight stuff that desperately need to be highlighted. And here are some of them. Number one, folks, North Carolina needs to send out the message that we protect life and that we stand up for human life. And that starts with standing up for the unborn. We have got to start standing firmly in the camp of being pro-life in this state. We've got to send the message out to the rest of this nation that if you come to North Carolina, we're not going to just let you murder your child just because you feel like it. Human life begins at conception. And killing human life after conception, that is murder. God is not going to continue to smile on this nation if we continue to co-sign on the murder of the most innocent among us. So we got to stand up and make a declaration that this is a pro-life state. And we're going to stand up for the unborn. That's number one. Number two, we got to stand up and make a declaration that we're going to protect the Second Amendment in this state. These counties that are making these declarations right now, saying they're sanctuary county for the Second Amendment, a lot of people are saying that that's an empty gesture. Let me remind you of another gesture that a lot of people might have said it was empty. It's called the Declaration of Independence. Didn't have a bit of legislation behind it. All it was a declaration from a bunch of guys that told the British, this is a free nation. When we make a declaration in our county saying that we're going to protect the Second Amendment, we're putting the government on notice that if you come here to violate our Second Amendment rights, we are not going to take it, and we're going to stand with our citizens and continue to support their rights. And I think every county in this state should make those declarations. Because what's happening right now is none of these leftists, if you notice, none of the ones in Virginia or California or anywhere else, none of them are making any moves to disarm any criminals. They haven't passed one bill to take the guns out of the hands of any criminals. It's all about taking guns from folks that have not done a single solitary thing. And if you notice, they're giving the criminals a pass a lot of times. Mm-hmm. We got a guy in Guilford County right now raped 4 women in 4 days, including a 14-year-old child. And the judge let him sign himself out on not paying 1 nickel. You want to take my guns away from me, right? Yeah, we got to protect that Second Amendment, folks. And it goes even further than that. That Second Amendment wasn't put in our Constitution so we could go hunting. It was put in our Constitution so we could protect ourselves from our government should it become too big and too tyrannical. Because our founders knew that any government that has all the power and all the guns will become tyrannical and will become a terror to the people. We got to hold on to that Second Amendment. And we need elected officials in office. They're not afraid to say what I just said. Too many of them are afraid to say it because they feel like somebody's going to look at them funny. That's fine. You can look at me funny all you want, but I'm telling the truth because our founders were telling the truth when they wrote that Second Amendment. Then right in the middle, folks, is education, which is probably going to be the biggest duty that I have while I'm at Lieutenant Governor. When it comes to education, folks, it's simple. Here's what we got to do. We got to stop indoctrinating and get back to educating, period. Starts with getting rid of Common Core and getting some discipline back in these schools. Now, when I say discipline, follow me on this. I don't mean that the teacher needs to be teaching little Johnny right from wrong. That needs to start at home. The discipline I'm talking about is this. You don't behave in this classroom. You need to return back home to your parents. They need to teach you how to return, and then maybe you can come back. We need to start putting some pressure on these parents to demand that they teach their children how to act in this classroom. Because if they don't act right in this classroom, we're going to send them home and concentrate on the ones that want to learn. That's the discipline that I'm talking about. Once we get that discipline back in, elementary school kids from grades 1 through 6, what is that? 1 through 6 need to be focused. They need to be learning 3 things and 3 things only. They need to be learning how to read, how to write, and how to do mathematics. That's it. No reason to teach a 5th grader about gender fluidity. No reason to be teaching a 5th grader about the 5 pillars of Islam. No reason to be teaching a 5th grader about homosexual sex. There's no reason for it. They need to be learning to read, write, and do mathematics. Teach them to read. Teach them how to absorb information. Teach them how to write. Teach them how to communicate. Teach them how to do mathematics. Teach them how to think logically. You do those 3 things, you teach them how to think instead of what to think. And you prepare them to matriculate through the rest of their education so they can become successful adults on the outside. Every ill we see right now, folks, going on in our society can all be traced back to education. The lack of respect for our Second Amendment comes directly from the fact that we're not teaching our children about the Constitution anymore. A lot of the homelessness we see, and it's not children, young people not being upwardly mobile. It comes directly from the fact that we're not teaching children how to operate in a constitutional republic that is run on the free market capitalist system. Instead of teaching them about the free market capitalist system, we're teaching them why it's bad and why they should embrace socialism. And so they're falling in the trap of not knowing how to operate out here when they come out here. Some of them can't even sign their names. Education has got to get back to the business of educating and get out of the business of indoctrination. And that's one of the things I want to focus on as Lieutenant Governor. Then on the opposite side, the last 2 things I want to stand up for. Number 1, folks, we gotta start doing right by our veterans. It's way past the time. Asking, begging, wishing, hoping is way past that. We got to start demanding that this state set a course to make our care for veterans the gold standard in America, in this nation. And we've got to do it. We've got to start taking the steps. We've got to start kicking the can down the road and passing the ball and passing the buck. These guys and gals go out, lose arms and lose legs and lose sight and lose their mind and come home. And then they're having to drive 100 miles to a VA clinic to get care they desperately need. That's not right, folks. They didn't have to drive 100 miles to go off to go serve. Somebody come pick them up. Took them right downtown and signed them up and then put them on a bus or an airplane and shipped them off to go serve. But then when they get home and they drop them off, all of a sudden it's up to them to get the care they need because they serve. Something wrong with that picture, and we better fix it quick. Veterans should be at the top, not the bottom. And all too often our priorities are out of order. And we're putting those men and women at the bottom when we should be putting them first. And we got to fix that. And then lastly, folks, we got to stand up for law enforcement. Far too long, law enforcement has been thrown under the bus, disrespected, derided, insulted, hell, even assassinated. And elected officials have been silent. They haven't said a word. And why have they been silent? Because they're afraid of these social justice warriors out here that are running around preaching these false narratives, saying policemen are bigots, and they commit acts of brutality and all this garbage. It's time to elect some people in office that are not afraid to stand up to these folks and tell them straight to their face, you're lying, and I'm standing on the side of these officers. You're not going to go out here and become protesters by burning police cars and busting the windows out of CVS. Let me tell you something about that, folks. The moment you throw a rock, the moment you chuck a brick or throw a Molotov cocktail, you are no longer a protester. You are a criminal, and you should be dealt with appropriately. Protesters do what we saw in Virginia. They march, they carry signs, and when it's over, they pick up their garbage and leave the place spotless, and they return to their homes. Criminals burn and loot, and they need to be dealt with harshly. We got far too many elected officials to refuse to do that. We got to start putting people in office, folks, that are going to stand up for this republic, and putting people in office that are going to stand up for our law enforcement. Like I said, it starts with us doing just that. No longer sit on the couch and wish that these problems are going to get solved. I did that for far too long myself. It's time for us to get up and actually take the reins of this government back. Wrestle it back from these career politicians who, when every issue hits their desk, the very first thing they ask is, not how is this going to affect the people. The very first question they ask is, how is this going to affect my reelection? We got to stop that, folks. And you all have the power to do that. And I want to be part of that. And that's why I want you to vote for me for lieutenant governor. If you have any questions, folks, I'll be happy to take them right now. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions you got. Yes, sir.
What happened in Virginia? You got two counties took over the entire state. A lot of money was put in there by Blue. So we have Raleigh, we got Charlotte. How are we going to prevent that from happening in our state? I talked to some legal scholars about that, about some type of way of making electoral colleges within states. That would take a lot of work. I think it could be done, and they think it could be done. But I think the solution really is, and Virginia is a prime example of this. What we've really got to do, we've got to energize our base. And if we energize our base can go out and get folks who are not politically aware and politically active, that believe like we do, and inspire them to get out and vote. I think we can overcome that. I really do. I think there are a lot of people right there in those cities that will agree with everything that I said. They're just not politically active. They either don't vote or they don't pay any attention to any of this. We got to wake people up. We got to wake them up. President Trump is a good example. President Trump, he shook a lot of people away, a lot of folks away. A lot of people haven't voted in years, finally voting again and getting politically active because this guy's actually getting out, energizing the base, and telling the truth. And I believe that's where it all starts. But that is something that desperately does need to be explored. And I think it could happen, but that'd be many years down the road. Right now, what we really need to focus on is getting our base out, getting them to draw new voters in.
I've heard the words you said, and I believe it. And
Yes,
I
sir.
think that you certainly have integrity.
Yes.
But what is being done, there's lots of politicians that go out and say some nice things.
Yes.
And they sound convincing as hell.
Yes.
Once they get up in political circles of the elites,
Yes.
they all converge.
Yes.
So is there any type of movement on the part of people like you, when you get there, to do something about that? That's what defeat this nation.
Absolutely. Again, it does sound like a broken record or a record that's skipping. That's when it comes to us. All too often, and I know I'm guilty of this, so I'm speaking for myself here. All too often, I'll vote for somebody, then I'll turn my back on them, expect them to go do my bid and won't pay attention to what they're doing. Our responsibility in this constitutional republic is not just to vote for the person, but to keep abreast of what they're doing. And when they're not doing what they said they were gonna do, we need to call them, write them, do whatever, and tell them, hey, you're not doing what I told you to do. And when the vote comes back up again and they get back up and start saying, hey, I'm gonna do X, Y, Z, look at them and say, no, you told me you were gonna do that before, and you're not doing any of it. I don't see any of it. I'm not voting for you again. That's how people like Nancy Pelosi, that's how people, even some of these rhinos, like Mitt Romney, stay in office for year after year after year. Because they give this lip service, we vote for them, and then we turn our backs on them. We don't stay apprised of what they're doing. We don't do due diligence about what they're doing. We need to vote those folks out. And I expect people to hold me accountable for everything that I've said here today. If I go to Raleigh and somebody offers me a bunch of money to vote for a pro-choice bill and I do it, I expect to hear from somebody. I expect to hear from them. And I don't expect to get reelected. But you can count on it. I'll never do that. Because the things that I've talked about here today, there's not a dollar, a dime, or anything else, or any political position, or any job that's important enough for me to turn my back on those principles. Because those are the things that I believe in. And to just make it plain, here it is. I don't really ultimately have to answer to anybody. I don't have to answer to anybody in this state. Ultimately, I'm going to have to stand before God and answer to him. And when he asked me, what did you do to stand up for the unborn? I said, well, I couldn't do that because this guy offered me $250,000, so I had to sign this bill. Well, here's your sign right over there. It stares that way. And I'm not going to have that happen, folks, because the most important thing you can decide on this earth is whether you're going to heaven or hell. And you can't do that through politics. You got to do that through principle. So that's the answer that I would give you. We got to keep an eye on those guys and make them do what we want, including them. We got to make them do it.
You mentioned education being a main point of concern. How do you feel about school choice and just other options that are?
Absolutely essential. School choice, charter schools, all that good stuff. It builds competition, and bottom line, it gives the power back to the parent. Public schools failing that parent to pull that child out, homeschool that child, charter school, private school, whatever it's available to them. And as far as I'm concerned, we should make that even more available. All the power for education should lie with the parents. The parents should ultimately be the ones to decide.
As a former teacher, I
Yes.
can say that parents go, education, that's your job. You're Miss
Yes.
Teacher, that's your job.
Yes.
And they don't step forward and take their own responsibility and accountability.
That's exactly right. One of the things, if you notice in this country, we all talk about our rights. I got my rights, my rights, my rights. The big question is, what about your responsibility? And a lot of parents have fallen short in that area of responsibility. We see it every day. And that's what I'm saying. We have got to start really preaching this gospel of responsibility, because that's the thing that makes a free nation go. Responsibility is the fuel of freedom. Without it, you lose it. And that's in every facet of your life. Guys, I think we can take one more question.
What do you feel about the illegal immigrants that are coming in and?
Well, here it is. Let's see if we can go over this real quick. Here's how this works. If the border is open, here's what happens. You have a large group of people who come across the border illegally simply because they want to come here and work and earn money. They're somewhat harmless. But there again, just because they're harmless, doesn't mean they haven't broken the law, don't need to be stopped and turned around. They need to go back and do it right. But there's a large swath of them that just come here to work and earn money. Makes it no better that they snuck across the border, and again, should be dealt with. But along with them and mixed in with them is a bag of folks who are coming across for illegal drugs, they're coming across to human traffic, and they're coming across for terrorism and gangs. And we got this little thing, this little phenomenon popping up called sanctuary cities for illegals. Now, those folks come across the border and they see these sanctuary cities. Where do you think the drug traffickers, human traffickers, gang members, and terrorists are gonna go? They're gonna go to those cities. And do you think they're gonna go live in Nancy Pelosi's neighborhood? No, they're gonna come live in our neighborhood. And they're gonna start with the poorest of the poor neighborhoods. So there again, we got the people at the very bottom of the economic scale being victimized because our federal government won't step up and do what it needs to do to secure our border. They're gonna come there, they're gonna be the ones that their children that they steal to traffic. They're gonna be the ones they sell the drugs to. They're gonna be the ones they recruit into the gangs and the terrorist cells. So that border's gotta be secure for that reason. And then when you move on to the state level, just like we discussed, sanctuary cities are dangerous. They're a breeding ground for crime because criminals who snuck over the border for nefarious reasons are gonna congregate in these places. It's gonna become like a nightmare. Somebody asked me the other day if I think illegals should be able to vote. I told them yes, they should be able to vote. They should be able to vote on whether or not they want to go back in a car, or a bus, or a train, an airplane, whatever. That's the choice. I think that's it, right? We ready? Yeah. All right, guys, thank you very much for being here again. I'm gonna let John take this. He's gonna say a few words to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.